What's up, party people? It's Keys Dan with RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com, coming to you live and in living color from the Radio What studios. And this is my podcast, What Makes You Smarter? It's an extension of the RadioWhat.com internet radio station that I've been running for quite some time. And if you need DJ services, where do you go? DJLittleRock.com. Check availability and get a free price quote. And maybe you can have me at your next event. And if you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. What makes you smarter? And learn with me right here on the program. Now, on with the show. Today on the program, 10 things you need to know today for Sunday, February 16th, 2020. 10 things you need to know today. Number 1, U.S. set to evacuate quarantined cruise ship passengers. Passengers on the Diamond Princess cruise ship, which has been quarantined in Japan since February 3rd due to 356 cases of coronavirus on board, are being evacuated Sunday. Around 400 American citizens will disembark, and those that have either not been infected or are not showing symptoms of the virus will return to the U.S. on chartered flights. Upon arrival, the passengers will once again be subject to quarantine at Air Force bases in California and Texas. Overall, the total number of deaths resulting from the coronavirus increased to 1,665, and the number of cases reached 68,500, China reported Sunday. However, Beijing's National Health Commission also reported more than 9,400 patients in China have been cured and discharged. This is according to NBC News and CNN. Number 2, speech reveals Xi was involved in coronavirus decision-making early on. Chinese state media published an internal speech delivered by President Xi Jinping on Saturday in which he describes taking action on the coronavirus outbreak as early as January 7th. In the speech, which was given February 3rd, Xi said he had, quote, issued demands about the efforts to prevent and control, end quote, the virus during a meeting of the Communist Party's highest council, the Politburo Standing Committee, last month, and that he personally authorized the lockdown of the epicenter, Wuhan, beginning on January 23rd. Quote, I have at every moment monitored the spread of the epidemic and progress in efforts to curtail it, end quote, he said. Publishing the speech is viewed as an attempt to show Xi has been involved from the start, but some analysts think it could backfire and lead to criticism that the government kept the public in the dark for too long. This is according to the Associated Press and the New York Times. Number 3, Biden criticizes Sanders for supporters' online attacks. Former Vice President Joe Biden has called on his fellow Democratic presidential candidate, Senator Bernie Sanders, independent Vermont, to, quote, disown, end quote, any of his supporters waging, quote, vicious, malicious, end quote, online attacks. In an interview set to air Sunday, Biden waded into a controversy surrounding Sanders' supporters who have been accused of threatening members of Nevada's Culinary Workers Union for not backing Sanders' Medicare for All proposal. Biden said Sanders may not be responsible for the actions, but, quote, he has some accountability, end quote. The vice president said his competitor should investigate whether any of the attacks were coming from inside the campaign. Quote, fire them, end quote, he said. Quote, find out, see what's going on, end quote. After the Sanders campaign was alerted about the union's accusations, they issued a statement requesting, quote, supporters of all campaigns not to engage in bullying or personal attacks. This is according to Politico and Reuters. Number 4, Esper, optimist about US Taliban deal. Defense Secretary Mark Esper said Saturday that a, quote, reduction in violence, end quote, agreement between the United States and the Taliban in Afghanistan, quote, looks very promising, end quote. The truce, which is expected to be formally announced Sunday and begin Monday, would last for 7 days. If a U.S. Taliban peace deal would follow, and all Afghan peace negotiations would begin within 10 days. A phased withdrawal of U.S. troops over the next 18 months would be part of that plan. Afghan President Ashraf Ghani has reportedly been skeptical of the proposal, but Esper says he thinks, quote, he is fully on board, end quote. Despite Esper's optimism, he said the plan does involve, quote, taking some risk, end quote. But, quote, we have to give peace a chance, end quote. This is according to the Associated Press. Number 5, more than 30 civilians reportedly killed during air raid in Yemen. Yemen's Houthi rebels said air raids conducted by the Western-backed Saudi UAE-led military coalition killed more than 30 civilians Saturday, just 1 day after the rebels said they shot down a Saudi jet fighter with a surface-to-air missile. The United Nations confirmed Saturday's death toll. The Houthis said women and children were among the dead. The coalition acknowledged the, quote, possibility of collateral damage, end quote, during their search and rescue mission for the downed plane. Lisa Grand, the UN's humanitarian coordinator for Yemen, said the killings were, quote, shocking, end quote, and, quote, unjustified, end quote, arguing that the belligerents in the conflict in Yemen have failed over the years to hold up their obligation to protect civilians. This is according to Al Jazeera and BBC. Number 6, Trump administration may halt GE engine deliveries to China. The Trump administration is considering halting deliveries of jet engines co-produced by General Electric for the development of a Chinese jetliner, which is reportedly years behind schedule. A person familiar with the discussion said. The White House's fear is tied to broader efforts to protect American intellectual property from Beijing. Washington reportedly believes China could eventually reverse engineer the engines, break into the global jet engine market, and compete with U.S. business interests. GE is arguing the advanced techniques make reverse engineering the engines very difficult. But even if China was able to do so, the engines have been on the ground there for years already. Administration officials are expected to discuss the proposal next week. This is according to the Wall Street Journal. Number 7, DNC sets qualifications for South Carolina debate. The Democratic National Committee established Saturday the qualifications for the party's presidential candidates to participate in the February 25th debate in Charleston, South Carolina, ahead of the state's primary at the end of the month. Candidates need to reach 10% in 4 DNC-approved national polls or 12% in South Carolina-specific polls, all of which must have been released between February 4th and February 24th. They can also qualify by winning at least one delegate to the Democratic National Convention from the Iowa and Nevada caucuses and the New Hampshire primary. Former Vice President Joe Biden, former South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg, Senator Amy Klobuchar, Democrat, Minnesota, Senator Bernie Sanders, Independent, Vermont, and Senator Elizabeth Warren, Democrat, Massachusetts, have already qualified under those parameters, leaving billionaires Tom Steyer and Michael Bloomberg on the outside for now. This is according to Politico and The Hill. Number 8, no casualties reported after rocket strike near U.S. Embassy in Iraq. Rocket struck Baghdad on Sunday near the United States Embassy, an American military source said. The rockets reportedly struck an Iraqi military base hosting U.S. troops in Baghdad's heavily fortified Green Zone, but there were reportedly no casualties and only minor damage. It was the 19th attack since October to target the embassy or U.S. troops stationed in Iraq. No one has claimed responsibility but Washington has accused Iran-backed groups within the Hashad al-Shabi, a military network officially incorporated into Iraq's security forces. Hashad factions have vowed revenge for the deaths of former Iranian Major General Qasem Soleimani and Hashad Deputy Chief Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis, who were killed by a U.S. strike in January. This is according to The Guardian and Al Jazeera. Number 9, 14-year-old indicted on murder charges in Tessa Majors case. A 14-year-old boy has been charged with fatally stabbing 18-year-old Barnard College student Tessa Majors during a park robbery in New York last December. The boy, who was arrested Friday night in the lobby of a building in the presence of his mother and relatives without incident, will reportedly be tried as an adult on 2 counts of second-degree murder, 1 count of first-degree robbery, and 3 counts of second-degree robbery. In December, police arrested a 13-year-old boy in connection to Major's murder, later charging him with robbery, criminal possession of a weapon, and second-degree felony murder. This is according to BuzzFeed News and the New York Times. Number 10, Miami's Jones wins controversial NBA dunk contest. The Miami Heat's Derrick Jones Jr. won the dunk contest Saturday during the NBA's All-Star Weekend, outlasting the Orlando Magic's Aaron Gordon. The result was not without controversy, however. After advancing to the final, Jones and Gordon each received perfect scores, and they did so again during the first dunk-off, setting up a second tiebreaker. Jones' dunk in that round garnered a score of 48 out of 50 from the judges, while Gordon's, in which he jumped over 7'5" Boston Celtics center Taco Fall, only notched a 47, even though 2 of the judges, who gave Gordon a perfect 10, said the panel had previously agreed to end that round in a tie as well. Gordon, who felt he deserved to win, said he's done with the dunk contest after losing in the similarly controversial 2016 edition. This is according to the Washington Post and ESPN. That's 10 things you need to know today for Sunday, February 16th, 2020. This has been Keys Dan with the What Makes You Smarter podcast. If you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. This is Keys Dan, RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com. Peace. I'm out of here. If you like what you hear, I encourage you to follow What Makes You Smarter on social media. Find it on Facebook at What Makes You Smarter, Instagram at What Makes You Smarter, Twitter at SmarterWhat, and YouTube, username Keys Dan. Leave What Makes You Smarter podcast a review and subscribe. Listen to What Makes You Smarter podcast on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and Podcast Addict. My personal favorite, learn with me on my podcast, What Makes You Smarter. And if you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. Call 501-470-6386 and leave a message to set up a time for What Makes You Famous. Support What Makes You Smarter podcast using the PayPal, paypal.me/Keys Dan. Email info@radiowhat.com. What Makes You Smarter is a production of Keys Dan Enterprises Incorporated at keysdan.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening.